When Michael hit screens, many fans walked away disappointed. The biopic came to a sudden stop in 1988, ending with the Wembley tour in London and leaving the darker, more controversial parts of his story completely untouched. But the wait for answers won't last forever. Part 2 is officially in development, and the next chapter could arrive as early as 2027.
Some victory tour performances. So I was automatically thrown into that aura and presence of being on stage with the real extras and all the wardrobe and the lights. And I felt it when I was on that stage, hearing the music and feeling it in my bones and performing. Those are my happiest times on set.
And honestly, that makes complete sense, because the first film never felt like a finished story. It closed out in the late 1980s, right at the height of the bad era, just before the first wave of misconduct allegations that would go on to shape so much of how the public saw Jackson. That final title card, "His Story Continues," was not simply a dramatic touch. It was a deliberate signal from the filmmakers that an entire chapter had been left on the table. And that missing chapter is almost certainly where a sequel would begin.
I know you dance like him, you move like him, but when did you feel like you embodied Michael?
I was thrown into it on day one, doing the bad performance, and then we went into doing some victory tour performances. So I was automatically thrown into that.
When Michael 2 finally arrives, the story would almost certainly move into the 1990s, a period when Jackson's life grew bigger, stranger, and far more divisive. Reports indicate there is still a massive amount of ground left uncovered from his later years, including the Dangerous, History, and Invincible eras, along with landmark music videos and performances that never made it into the first film. That alone means the sequel could step into the era when Michael stopped being just a pop star and turned into a full global phenomenon. One of the most natural starting points would be the black or white moment in 1991, a time when his image had already grown larger than the music itself. A follow-up could also push forward into the 1993 Super Bowl halftime show, which some reports suggest was actually written into an earlier draft of the original film's script before being cut.
It was truly one of the most remarkable things, and I thought like that would be the takeaway of Prince's week. But then, of course,
the rain. I was always worried about the rain. I mean, Prince.
That would be a perfect fit for Part 2, because the Super Bowl represents one of the most iconic images of Michael Jackson at the absolute height of his power. It was a moment when the world was no longer simply watching him perform. They were watching him completely reinvent what live entertainment could be.
Had so many options of iconic imagery, right?
Yes, I did, and that was great because and then a Super Bowl is covered with about 26, 27 cameras, right. And I had a few of my own in there and a few of my own cameramen, so I had like 30.
From there, the sequel could naturally move through the Dangerous World Tour, the History Tour, and the massive stage productions that defined both. Those years produced some of Jackson's most memorable performances, from Remember the Time to Earth Song, and they pushed his celebrity into a scale the world had rarely seen before. If the first film was about the rise, the second would be about what happens when fame no longer feels like a dream and starts to feel like something far heavier to carry, where the tone of a sequel gets far more complicated. Lionsgate has stated that there is a significant portion of Jackson's life, completely separate from the allegations, that could carry an entire film on its own. But the legal boundaries around this story still carry real weight. The first movie was forced to cut its planned third act after attorneys discovered a settlement clause involving Jordan Chandler that prohibited his dramatization on screen. And that is precisely why the sequel conversation is so deeply connected to the unused material that never made it into the original cut. In other words, Part 2 is not simply about where the story goes next. It is also about what the legal framework will actually allow that story to become.
Abrams report on MSNBC. Dan, good morning. Good to see you. How much impact did the sister's testimony have?
She's significant. She's the first of the family members to come forward, and the oldest, to say, I wasn't a kid. I wasn't 9 or 10 or 12 or 13. I was 17 at the time. Michael Jackson was serving liquor to my brothers, served it to me, and on another occasion saw Michael Jackson in the bedroom with his brothers, with her brothers, with empty liquor bottles.
So if the jury believes that Michael Jackson was giving a young accuser alcohol, does that mean guilty right there?
Not automatically. It's certainly helpful, but they would still have to show that he was giving them alcohol in an effort to molest the boy. Alcohol alone would not suffice.
She talked about people, intimates of Michael Jackson, trying to intimidate her family, virtual house arrest, as I just said. One of the people...
Reports also point to a surprising amount of existing footage that could feed directly into a second film. Fuqua has said that roughly a third of what he shot for Michael could potentially carry over into a sequel. And insiders have revealed that the original cut of the film ran close to 4 hours before it was trimmed down and reworked. That means Michael may not be starting from scratch. It could be built, at least in part, from the material the first film was legally unable to use.
It's alfalfa. They originally from South America. And they originally come from the mountains in Peru, the Indians. And they're from the breed of the alpaca, as well as the camel. And Louis, he was in the circus. I bought him from a lady who was a circus performer. And what he would do, he would give kids rides, 60 pounds or under. And that's what he would do all day, and do tricks. He's a charming, sweet animal.
There is also the emotional weight of the story that a sequel would have to face head-on. A follow-up would almost certainly need to work through the turbulence of Jackson's personal life in the 1990s, including his marriage to Lisa Marie Presley, his later marriage to Debbie Rowe, and the way his private world became completely tangled with public obsession. Vanity Fair has also noted that a follow-up could trace the broader arc of his final years, covering the period leading up to his death in 2009 and the unfinished This Is It chapter that came after. These are not minor footnotes. They are the kind of real-life turns that would give a sequel the weight of a full reckoning rather than simply a continuation of the first film.
In the music industry, we are not going to sell out. We're not going to back down. This is the beginning of a long walk to freedom. Thank you, and God bless you. Michael Jackson eloquently spoke today.
That is what makes the idea of Michael 2 feel so different from a typical sequel announcement. This is not a superhero franchise or a routine studio follow-up. It is a second chapter in one of the most debated lives in modern music history. The first film covered the rise. The sequel would have to take on the pressure, the excess, the spectacle, and the long shadow that followed all of it. And that is exactly why so many people are already treating it less like a possibility and more like something that was always going to happen.
I remain out of the country undergoing treatment for a dependency on pain medication. This medication was initially prescribed to see the excruciating pain that I was suffering after recent reconstructive surgery on my scalp. There have been many disgusting statements made recently concerning allegations of improper conduct on my part. These statements about me are totally false. As I have maintained from the very beginning, I am hoping for a speedy end to this.
So the sequel is the next chapter that Lionsgate appears to be actively building toward. A chapter that could step into the biggest songs, the biggest stages, and the biggest controversies Michael Jackson ever faced. And when it does finally arrive, it will not simply be another biopic. It will be the part of the story that the first film had no choice but to leave behind.
So I'm trying to identify whose handwriting it was.
Okay.
Did we answer that? Yeah, he did. And then I assume you have read the handwriting, so we now know what it all says. You mentioned that it was in reference to an interview. Are you talking about an interview with a media representative of some sort?
No. I made a list of things. When I get angry enough, I write down what I want to say and what I want to talk about to set the record straight. Because you get to a point where you get tired of people lying. I get tired of